Greetings, comic book fans. This is H.H. German coming to you from the greatest city in the world, New York City. And we're back with another video. And before I get into that, please hit the subscribe button if you'd like to keep up to date on these videos. And of course the like button, because I'm sure you're going to like this video. And at this time I'd like to take a swig of my Calico mug before we dive into this topic. Always good. All right, so today we're going to talk about a topic that I've never seen discussed anywhere in comics, and that is the topic of bodybuilding in comics. Bodybuilding has played a key role in the visuals of comic book creation. I can tell you that I was reading comics back in the 80s and 90s, but because I was so enamored with comics, I would also go a step further, and I'd get a lot of these back issues from back in the 70s and 60s, and I enjoyed those stories as well. But one thing that I saw quite evidently in the artwork of all of these comic books was a focus on the drawing of very muscular, heroic characters. And that's something that, again, it was key, and it was very prominent going back to the beginnings of comic book creation. There was this effort by the artist to really accentuate and visually enhance the hero. And one of the ways, or the main way to do that, was to make these heroes, these superheroes, very muscular. And this was something that was both visually captivating to the readers, but also inspirational to the main audience for comic books, which has always been historically young boys, young males, right? So, and you sort of juxtapose that with what you have now, and the contrast is pretty dramatic. And I think the essence of all this is the foundation. The foundation being that these artists, the early artists, and even well into the 80s and 90s, had a direct inspiration with bodybuilding. I don't even think that's a point to argue. I'm pretty sure that, I don't care which artist you name. I don't care if it's going back to Kirby, Gene Colan, John Romita, senior and junior, frankly, but mainly senior. I'm talking about here, but again, also junior. The Buscema brothers. I mean, I don't care who you're talking about here, and into the more into my era, McFarlane, Lee, and some of these others. I don't think there are any of them that didn't know on a first name, not a first name, but on an actual name basis, all the bodybuilders that were competing at the time. Okay, I'm pretty sure that all of them purchased bodybuilding publications, okay, and were able to study the physique, the anatomy of these, in essence, supermen, right, and superwomen, eventually, to be inspired by drawing these heroic, muscular figures. And frankly, I tell you what, I don't know, and this is not to diss the artists today. It's just that there are many young creators that I'm pretty sure, based on what I've seen in the comic books, don't even know who won the Mr. Olympia last year. All right? So, I can tell you, and I'm not even into bodybuilding, I can tell you who won it. The guy who won, I'm pretty sure, was an Iranian fellow. His name is Hani, something like that. his name escapes me, but I know his name. He's a short little guy. I think he's like 5'5" or 5'6". I think his name is Hani or something like that. And prior to that, it was El Sambadi, and that's Big Ramy, and he won it for the past couple of years. Big Ramy. Masai, I think Muhammad El Sambadi, I think is his name. Big Ramy, and what a wonderful job he did for the past couple of years. Anyway, the bottom line is, I'm not super into bodybuilding. I can't tell you all the names these days, but I certainly could tell you all the names back in the 80s and 90s, and I'm pretty sure all of the artists at the time could tell you all of their names too, and they could tell you who won the Mr. Olympia. And I'm pretty sure it's because they were directly inspired by these bodybuilders, and they would study the posing, they would draw the anatomy of these individuals, because there was plenty of photo shoots in the publications. You know, back in the 80s and 90s, we used to read the bodybuilding magazines. Okay, we used to get the magazines. Now you can go on YouTube, and you know, this is a sort of a not a knock, but one of the benefits that we had. Everything was in print, right? So now I'm pretty sure they don't make these bodybuilding magazines, at least the way they used to. I'm pretty sure maybe a couple of them are out, but certainly not in the availability. You know, we had them back in the 80s and 90s. As I mentioned, now everything's on YouTube, right? But still, you could still gain access. In fact, you might even, it's arguable, you have better access now because these things are on screen and you can do frame by frame shots, and most of the artwork is being done on screen anyway. So if anything, you have more access to you know, studying the bodybuilders now. And if you look at the art, take a look at what Marvel Comics is doing these days, okay, in their comic books. Take a look at the heroic figures they're drawing in those comic books these days in Marvel Comics right now. Go ahead, take a look. All right? I guarantee you those characters are nowhere near aesthetically what they were back in any of the books that you'll see in the 90s and 80s and 70s and 60s, okay, going back. And again, this is, in my view, directly impacted by the fact that the artists back in these eras of the 80s, 90s, and earlier were very, you know, inspired by the bodybuilding form and physique. And if you look at what's going on today, and it's not just Marvel, but I'm using Marvel as an example because I think collectively Marvel, with respect to the visuals, I think it's very pronounced. Because they're, you know, the largest, I guess, Western comic book publisher these days. Because frankly, they're not the big, in my opinion, and the opinion of many these days, they're not the biggest. These days, manga is, you know, significantly taking over that business, and Scholastic. But they're the ones who we know in Western comics that, you know, for many years have been sort of at the top. And if you look at their comics now, you just don't see what was happening in the 80s and 90s and earlier. There isn't this studying of the bodybuilding form, and frankly, I think if you take a poll at Marvel and you go around to all the artists, and I think this is mainly more for the younger artists, and you ask them, hey, do you know who won the Mr. Olympia this past year? Or can you name 5 bodybuilders? Guarantee you're not going to have a pretty high percentage of people knowing the answers to those questions. But I tell you that I guarantee you that same poll taken in the 80s and 90s and earlier most certainly would have yielded a much higher result. And again, this is not something I don't think I've ever heard of this being spoken about in comics. And let me tell you, it is having a big impact, because what is it that stops people in their tracks when they're walking by books of any kind, especially comic books? It's the cover. You know, Tom McFarlane was quoted. I heard him say this recently, and I don't know if this video was from many years ago or it was recent, but I know this is something that he's felt for many years, and it's that, you know, you can take a 5-year-old, okay, and have him write a comic book story and put him, you know, Todd McFarlane, to do the cover and the art inside. And I guarantee you that that book, and he says this, he guarantees you that that book is going to sell better than if you had, you know, Alan Moore writing the book, and you had, you know, any person off the street who doesn't really know how to draw that well. All right, so, or that same 5-year-old. You know, I don't care how talented that 5-year-old is going to be. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe that's not the right, maybe it's you know, a 5-year-old who doesn't have artistic skill, because who knows, there might be 5-year-olds that are really talented, extremely talented aesthetically. But anyway, the bottom line is, you get the point. The point is that visuals sell when it comes to comics, okay? And you really need to have powerful impact visuals. And if you're not doing that, guess what? You're not going to sell comics. And you could add that to the many variables that are causing comic book sales to be at the floor. Okay, yet these comics have to look great. Okay, that's a key component of selling comics. They have to look great. All right, so without dragging the point on, I just wanted to share that with you, because frankly, I think it's having an impact on the comic books, the sales, the quality of the comic books. And I think if more of these artists really start looking at some of what's happening right now in bodybuilding. And by the way, bodybuilding, just a quick point, I know enough about bodybuilding that you know, I haven't lifted weights since I was a teenager. I have a pretty good, you know, solid physique, but that's because I'm a former professional fighter. Some of you guys know this already. I'm a former prize fighter. But you know, I definitely was into bodybuilding as a kid. I certainly looked up to that, like a lot of us, you know, young males, aspired to be heroic and visually imposing. And certainly that is something, you know, the bodybuilding is a way to attain this visual, this heroic sort of inspirational look that the classic bodybuilders of the back in the day, what do you call this? You know, a lot of these guys, like their names escape me now, of course, now that I'm on the spot. But you know, Greg Park. You know, I'm talking about like way back. You know, Steve Reeves back in, you know, the 50s and whatnot. You know, Steve Reeves was used as you know, he was a Superman. He was Superman back in the day. Okay, this is a bodybuilder. Okay, you go back to that era of the 50s and 60s, and these were very, very inspirational characters. All the kids wanted to be like, you know, Steve Reeves and some of these other amazing bodybuilders from back in the day. All right, and then of course you got Arnold, you know, in the 70s, and you know, look at, you want to talk about inspirational, okay? And that's just, you know. And, you know, just to bring manga into this very quickly, you know, if you look at these manga titles from back in the, you know, the 80s, when I was reading manga, 80s and 90s, I'm still reading manga, but back when I first approached manga, you know, Fist of the North Star, that was Sylvester Stallone. You know, Kenshiro was inspired by characters like, you know, the Mad Max character that Mel Gibson played back in the 80s, you know, Sly, you know, Sylvester Stallone, who's, you know, probably my biggest idol. You know, this is inspirational, folks. This is how you, the human physique, sapiens, okay, is most appealing and inspirational when this body is built and it shows strength and vigor and the durability to overcome any circumstance. And that inspirational element, both I think in the storytelling and in the visuals, is missing today. Folks, you guys, we need to remember, we're storytellers here as creators in comics. We need to remember the essential components of comic book creation. It's conflict, good versus evil, and a heroic character that's going to overcome this evil, regardless of how formidable it is. And I don't think there's a better way to depict that visually. Again, that's the key. With showing the human form at its most elite level. And again, it's I don't want to say it's missing in comics, but compared to 80s and 90s and earlier, yeah, you can definitely say that. There's a very strong argument for saying that. Anyway, that's the video. Don't want to belabor the point. Hit subscribe if you liked. Hit subscribe if you want to keep getting these videos. Hit like if you liked the video, and I'm sure you did. And always remember that Sigma Comics is here to fight animal abuse through comics. With our comic book series, Here Comes Calico, which, by the way, is available right now on Kickstarter. Issue 7 is on Kickstarter right now. So get on Kickstarter and type in Here Comes Calico, and you'll see Issue 7. Click on that profile for the Here Comes Calico Issue 7 project, and go ahead and hit back this project, because when you do, you're going to get a bunch of rewards that I'm sure you're going to select one or many, and get them for yourself, get them for your friends. It's just a wonderful series, and we're very proud of it, because the Calico gets intel on people who abuse and kill animals, and he goes after those assholes with extreme justice. All right, so again, hit the like button, hit subscribe, and keep on fighting for animals.